In the fast-paced world of business, finding a clear path to profitability can be a challenge. Welcome to 0 to 100 with your host, Jared Guy Randolph, seasoned business and finance expert. Tune in for actionable insights and strategies to accelerate your business success.
Hello, Accelerators. Welcome to 0 to 100. Today, I am very excited to introduce Tessabella Jelten, who is an acclaimed marketing strategist, a real estate coach, and one of the top digital marketing educators in the U.S. today. I'm also very proud to call her a dear friend. And she has a unique way of building, scaling, and branding companies that you're going to want to hone into. And we cover some really good topics that are going to help you build your business and become more profitable. Everything from inspiring investor confidence all the way to telling your story in a way in which is going to resonate with your audience, and really key and really interesting, using digital or virtual courses as a way of lead generation. Totally outside of the box. I think you guys are going to enjoy this one. For those of you who do not know me, my name is Jared Guy Randolph. I am the founder of BoxFi. We are payment consultants who help businesses like yours create more profitability. And I'm excited to share the network that I have built over my 25-year entrepreneurial journey to help you grow your business and, most importantly, become more profitable. Ladies and gentlemen, let's accelerate together. Tessa, thank you for joining us on 0 to 100 today.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited.
So very much so looking forward to this conversation because at a young age, you've done a ton of things in your career. And I would love for you to talk to our audience about how you got started in real estate right out of high school at a very young age.
It was right out of high school. I moved down to Arizona. So right at the very beginning, I kind of gave myself an additional hurdle to jump over, which was now I'm in a market where I know absolutely no one, which for anyone in real estate, that tends to be a challenge because a lot of your early business will come through, your sphere of influence. So I was in this completely new place. I was working multiple jobs, going to college. And in my little bit of downtime that I had, I always enjoyed watching HGTV. As silly as it sounds, I did love watching these flipping TV shows. And I kept thinking to myself, I feel like I could do that. And so I enrolled in sort of the University of Google in addition to going to real university. And I started just watching whatever I could. I actually found this sort of like pirated version of Sam Merrill's Fortune Builders. So I'd watch the screen recordings of that someone else had posted on on the black web or whatever. And that was initially how I kind of learned some of those primary skills, and went out and really started pitching myself to just about anyone whose ear I could get. And it's so funny because I was really introverted, but I've always loved the phrase, everyone has something that makes them an instant extrovert. And I became so obsessed with real estate that became my instant extrovert topic. And I could talk to anyone about it with a degree of confidence. And, I got somebody to fund my first flip when I had negative 36 cents in my personal bank account. And somehow my 18-year-old confidence shined through, and I got somebody to believe in me, probably even more than I did, and I was off to the races.
So let's talk to the audience about how you were able to get that first deal done with that first investor. How did you approach them? Because whether it's your first deal or it's your 25th deal, bringing in investor capital can be very tough. So I would love for you to tell the audience a little bit more about what you actually did.
Yeah, and it's interesting because, I guess you hear different people say different things, but for the most part, I think most people will say if you find a great deal in real estate, the money comes easily. Because if you have a great deal, you can bring that to other people and they'll be much more inclined to invest in that. I kind of went the opposite direction. And I said, I'm going to find money first. I want to make sure I have somebody who can back an investment. And so I put together a slideshow, and I spent so much time on the little spinning transitions and making sure it had all the cool stuff as if that would matter. And I started talking to anyone and everyone. And I was a manager at the time at this little coffee shop. And I was talking to a regular of mine, and he goes, "Oh, I have a guy that has money." And I was like, "Oh, well, okay. Love that for you. I don't know if that's $10 or $10 billion. I have no idea." And I ended up getting on a Skype meeting with this guy and went through my whole presentation. And I remember then sitting there thinking like, it felt like 30 minutes of silence afterwards. It was probably 5 seconds, but I was just petrified at what he would say afterwards. And he basically said, yeah, let's do it. Like, find a property, bring it to me. I'm interested. I like your excitement, your passion. You seem like you're going to go out there and get it done. Like, let's see what we can do. And so, I mean, it was definitely someone taking a chance on me, but I think that I really came with, I had a decent amount of knowledge from what I had researched, but more than anything, I really think that my passion and commitment to making it happen was truly communicated and shined through in what I was saying. And that was ultimately what got me to that first phase. And with no shortage of challenges throughout the process, but it was I took down a pretty small deal initially, and it ended up working out despite some of those challenges.
Inspiring investor confidence is huge in any business. And you've worked not only in real estate, you've been in the marketing side, you've been in the sales side, you've built other companies, you've been a CMO for a handful of companies and been very successful at it. Talk to the audience because our entrepreneurs who are listening are always looking for unique ways or insights on raising capital, on building that confidence with their potential investors. How do you do it? Especially if you're an existing business, you already have something to show. How do you elevate to the next level and bring in the right type of capital to grow your business?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, to break it down in the most elementary of ways, I think it definitely does come to what your offer is. If it's just, hey, I need more money to expand my company, that's not super insightful. It doesn't really give me any drive to actually invest with you. But if you have carved out this corner of the market where there's going to be a unique additive, I think that that turns the heads of just about anyone. And the second piece would definitely be getting connected and networking, which there really is an art to that once you get into it. It's not just aimless networking because that can be the biggest waste of your time and energy, but having really intentional networking and conversations. And I mean, this has been a principle for me in so many ways is see how you can add value to other people in order to get a seat at the table. And it may take longer than you initially want it to, but if you genuinely are finding ways to service other people, you're going to continue to get in more and more circles and a spot at more and more tables. And before you know it, that's going to open up a lot of conversation that ultimately results in investors in my case.
I like what you said, and I want to make sure the audience is hearing this clearly is that if you're going out to raise capital, you have to position yourself as what you are selling, your product or your service is unique and a value add in the marketplace. And there are consumers that will desire what your product or service is. That is how you get the attention of the right type of investor for your business. The one thing I do want to touch on, which I think is incredibly important because I share the same concept or thought around building relationship is how do you go after adding value to a potential investor or someone in your network where you ultimately will be able to make an ask for them, but doing it genuinely and authentically? How do you do that when you're first starting to build those relationships?
I think it definitely varies a bit depending on the industry, because obviously that's going to look a little different for a plastic surgeon versus a high level real estate investor, something like that. But I tend to just start off a conversation with what does a great referral look like for you? They're going to dive into it a little bit more. And another benefit of that is 9 times out of 10, they're going to reverse that question and ask you the same thing as well. So now you've potentially created this referral network. But then the real key is that you take that information and you actually go out and try to form a genuine referral to them and actually follow through on sending something over, or at least attempting to. I think even if it doesn't turn into something, if you put a genuine effort into like actively pursuing an effort to give them somebody who fits that archetype of an ideal referral to them, they really appreciate it and tends to get you further conversation that can maybe turn into lunch or, a meeting, a conversation that goes a little deeper than that initial meeting.
So, one thing that I learned from one of my mentors is that the most interesting conversation that someone will have is about themselves. So, if
Mhm.
you can engage that person and have and find out more about what makes them tick, whether it is professionally or personally, you can start to connect the dots. And it doesn't always have to be from a business perspective, it also could be from a personal perspective because you might have contacts in your network that can add value to the individual you're talking to, their husband or wife, their kids, a family member. That's always a value add as well. And another one of the key points is just connecting people within your network. And I've done that successfully. And how it's a way in which I've built some of my biggest relationships is just like, you need to meet XYZ friend and put them together and let them take it and run with it.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think that there's also, there is a tasteful way in doing this. And this is something you do really well because obviously I've experienced it on the other end. But just for those listening, like it's not just, okay, let me introduce and put all these people in group text messages and group emails and all that stuff, because that can actually be more harmful to a relationship than beneficial if you haven't vetted that introduction. Right. So I think that there's a lot to be said for that too, is think about what a valuable connection is. I tend to usually reach out to the individuals first also and say, hey, would love to connect you with this person. Here's why I think it would be valuable. Are you okay with an introduction? And I've never had somebody say no, but it's just sort of that additional courtesy that you're really teeing up that relationship. And I think that gives them a little bit more runway to take that ball and run with it.
And it shows that you are thinking about the person and you do that so well. And when someone realizes that they're top of mind for you, that also makes them feel good. They get a warm and fuzzy from that. So that's a huge value add. What most of the business owners need to realize that are out there right now, and a lot of our audience are experienced, seasoned business owners, is you have almost everything you need in your network today. You just have to learn to be more resourceful, ask for the favor, add value to someone else so they want to add value to you. Continue to connect with your network, and you will be able to build the success that you want to build by using the resources that are there in front of you.
Absolutely. I've always said, I believe that I can get to absolutely anyone in the world within 6 degrees of separation. Like I have full confidence. And I think that there's something to be said in that you need to really take a look more at your network and not just the primary people that you could call and talk to immediately right now, but like think about how to expand that out a little bit more and more and more. And it's not to like leech on to other people, but if you really think about it and you do have a way to insert yourself in a situation or a conversation where you're now with somebody who was 2 degrees away from you and you can now bring them more into your inner circle, that's how you truly grow and expand.
Oh, I love that. So I think you're really uniquely positioned to talk about this because yes, your foundation is around real estate, but you've done so much on the marketing and branding side and in various types of business. What I would love for you to talk to the audience about is the importance of building a brand as a business owner and strategies on how you can do it successfully. Whether you're a
Well,
big company or you're a small company, how should business owners be looking at building their brand in today's market?
that is a great question. I have one initial thing that I think is really applicable to anyone, no matter what level of business you're at. And it's a principle I've always really stayed committed to. And that is that, a brand that people buy into for a lifetime is telling a story. And so, whether you are an individual building your personal brand or you're a larger organization, one of the best ways to get like audience buy-in and truly cement your brand in the market, in the industry, is by telling a story and bringing them along on the journey. I think that so many people think, I don't want to market something until it's the finished product, it's the best it can be. And yet people love to see that sort of like hero journey. They want to know. So, an example, I always tell my new real estate agents this. I say, don't wait until you get your license and you're with a brokerage to start sharing that you're getting into real estate on social media. Start documenting it from the day you sign up to get your license. Document going to the classes, document this journey. And before you know it, you have people who've really watched that evolution. And it's also really cool to be able to, I still to this day in my marketing pieces will pull back something from 10 years ago and be able to reference that. And it is some of my top performing content every single time because people see, oh, wow, she's really been at this for that long, building this brand and layering onto it. And I think when you start with that in mind, it also allows you to have so much more flexibility and fluidity in your brand as you grow. Because if you only wait to market yourself around one finished product that's the best it's ever going to be, it's hard to pivot because people have now only seen that one finished, polished thing. And so instead, if you're showing the journey the entire time, I think it makes you much more limber as a brand. You're able to pivot and really kind of show that evolution if you focus on a new niche or you're expanding or whatever that may be.
So I want to come back to the content creation, but let's stick on the telling of the story because I think that's really important. You hear various ways in which you should approach this. Some are tell the story of you and your company. Others who are master marketers will say, well, you need to focus on your customer, the problem that you're solving for the customer, how you solve that problem differently than anyone else, whether it's the best Italian food in the area or the best fitting alpaca sweaters in the nation. How do you, as a business owner, create that balance between serving the customer's needs first and selling what you do and its uniqueness?
Well, I think the best way to explain that is a phrase that I love, which is if you can explain your customer's pain, desire, or problem better than they can, they will automatically assume that you have the solution. And so, more often than not, we can explain that because it was an experience that we had firsthand ourselves. And if it wasn't, you've probably helped other people have that firsthand experience. And so I think that weaving some of those personal stories and those key elements in, but I do believe the most important piece is speaking to what they are thinking, feeling, wanting, craving. And again, that can be applied across just about any industry. Because if I have a desire for a specific type of, plastic surgery or a specific type of financial outcome or a specific Italian meal, any of those 3 things, all 3 very different, but if somebody can explain what I'm wanting better than I could even put into words, they are automatically the person I'm going to. That has cemented them in my mind as the go-to solution despite just about any other factor.
So I want to make sure that I get this right for the audience, and I'm writing it down myself because that was very, very impactful. So if you can explain the problem, the pain point, the issue the customer is having better than they can, they are going to believe that you are the solution.
Yes.
That's also, as a business owner, I think something that's super important. What process do you have to go through to get to that, in 30 seconds, the elevator pitch, which we've heard a billion times, to actually hone in the problem that you're solving? What audit of your business do you need to go through to be able to create something that's super seamless and streamlined so your customers do hear that when you're marketing?
I think there's 3 ways to get there, and in an ideal world, you'll have all 3, but I think even 1 or 2 of them can definitely get you there. First being your own personal experience navigating that problem or issue. Because again, in most cases, what we build a business around is a solution that we once needed ourselves. So I think really assessing that journey of your own personal navigation. Second being, of course, past clients. My hope is that you've already helped somebody achieve that outcome, and so you can go back and ask them questions. You can incentivize them. It's a really great way to stay in touch, even with past clients and past customers, is incentivize them to do a quick survey or an interview and feature them in some way and ask some of these questions to dive deeper into, how you helped them navigate it, what the outcome was, what was some of those things that came up during the process were. And then third is, and this is great, especially for those newer business owners out there, if you maybe haven't had a large sum of clients that you've helped, is people in your network, even if they didn't go to you. So this always blows my real estate agents' minds when I talk to them about this. But I'm like, if you need help really crafting your custom methodology and your approach to helping somebody buy or sell a property, look at your network and talk to the people in your circle, friends, family, coworkers, acquaintances who have recently gone through a transaction. They didn't use you because either you didn't market yourself well enough or you weren't yet licensed or whatever it was, but ask them if you can interview them about that experience. And you'll learn so much in that moment of what was done right, what was not done well, how you can improve, and how you can actually get a leg up on your competition by talking with people that you didn't even service.
So, just to recap this, because that was brilliance, and I want to make sure that we hone in on these 3 things. When you are building your business's story or brand, the 3 things that you want to look at is, 1 is talking about your personal experience and how you overcame or you solved that product. 2 is having past client testimonials. You can get a survey, you can record a video, you can do an interview. It's another good way to reconnect with your past customers as well. And then number three is just using the network that you already have as a sounding board, as a resource to interview them and find out what they're looking for when it comes to that product or service, whether or not they've actually used you.
Correct.
Correct?
And even if they haven't yet transacted with somebody, you could say, hey, if you were going to do this, what would be some of those most important things to you? Or what would you make your decision off of?
Mm,
Or, would a lot of past reviews and testimonials matter to you? Would years in service matter to you? Asking those kind of questions to see where your average customer is going to place weight on those different things. Because a lot of times we make assumptions on what's more important that actually doesn't matter too much in our customers' eyes.
Finding out what is important to your customer is tantamount to success. And
Absolutely.
you as the business owner, sometimes we're so in love with what we're creating because it is solving the problem that we have or have had, that sometimes we actually miss the little nuances of what the greater community or greater consumer is actually looking for. So
Yeah.
spending the time to do those interviews of past clients, present clients, or even people within your network who aren't clients, and asking them about your product or service and what they would want to see or what they wouldn't want to see, those are going to be key factors in building out what your storyline can be. And again, all of this is incredibly important when it comes to creating a business that is highly profitable because we're selling more product.
Absolutely. And key thing here, I think this should go without saying, is as you're doing those interviews and those conversations, make sure that you're collecting information from the people who do fit the
Mm,
archetype of your ideal client. And also, you can collect that information from people who are not your ideal client as a key indicator of what to steer away from in your marketing.
mm,
If you have somebody that isn't fitting that perfect, description of who you would ideally like to service, you can still have that conversation with them. And maybe the things that appeal to them are some of the things that you don't include as much of in your marketing because you're speaking to a different segment of the market.
hmm. So let's dive into a little bit more about content creation and then we'll talk about lead generation for the business owners and entrepreneurs who are listening today. Content creation, I struggle with personally. I think the content that I put out there is all right. And I'm working on my content strategy. But the challenge that I have, Tessa, and what I hear from a lot of business owners, from a lot of friends, frankly, is feeling as if we're putting out something that's really genuine and authentic and means something. Because there's days I put out content and I was like, oh my God, nobody's going to want to hear that. And sometimes it's the days where I have the best interaction with the people who are looking at my social media. So, how do we determine or create a content strategy that's going to speak to our customers to help drive more business?
Well, I don't want to harp on it too much, but it does sort of build off of what we just talked about. The more that you know who you're trying to attract, the easier it is to create content that's going to resonate with them. Because if I have a really clear understanding of who I'm trying to bring into my business and my network, and I understand what their pains, their desires, their struggles are, I can create content endlessly because it's almost as if I'm speaking and addressing them directly in that content. So I think that
Right.
really simplifies the strategy piece overall. But the
Mm,
secondary filter to kind of put that through is that everyone looking at content, they are looking for it. They're looking at it through a lens of what's in it for me. Is this entertaining me? Is this giving me something I didn't know? Is this something I can share with other people in my life? They're always going to be loosely putting it through the filter of what's in it for me. And so if we put out too much that doesn't fulfill those desires, that's when I think we get a lot of people that bypass us. Now, that's not to say that there isn't a time and place for like personal content and things that are heartwarming and whatnot. But I do think that in general, really good rule of thumb for getting people more engaged with what you're sharing.
truly great advice. All right, let's talk about the infamous lead funnel. I think a lot of business owners struggle with this as well. And you are genuinely an expert because you've got killer lead funnels. Let's talk
Well,
about how you create the right type of lead funnel and give me an example of something that you've done that's been super successful.
yeah, I mean, there's so many ways to go about it. I think that when it comes to building some sort of funnel and having ways to collect leads, You do have to also pay attention to not overcomplicating it. I think it's a pretty common thing in the lead gen space that there's these really complex funnels with upsells and downsells and cross sells and all this stuff. And as much as that can work for some industries and for some markets, it's not universally applicable. In some cases, the easiest thing you can do is put out a great piece of like eye capturing advertisement, get somebody to give you their name and email and throw them into a drip campaign where they then convert.
Mm,
And that honestly tends to be my most successful one. So I love giving away freebies, lead magnets that are really targeted again to the specific pains and problems of my ideal client, and then
mm.
getting them into we do a 7-day drip campaign. Over that 7 days, it's adding value. We treat it sort of as a mini course across 7 days with a subtle call to action every single day towards the end, and then convert them at the end of it into our paid product. And that almost every single time, just insane conversion rates. People love the free value. You're front loading so much
Mhm.
value. And in the same time, you're also conditioning them in how you teach. So then when they get into your course that they ended up purchasing, they're also already really conditioned for your teaching style. And so they tend to have a better result going through that course or product.
Very interesting. So, this has been a huge topic. It has been teaching what you know, teaching what you do. How do you stand out from what is seemingly a crowded field right now of people who are experts and they're going out and they're creating these courses where they're actually doing, whether it's school .com or some of the other platforms that are out there? Udemy is another one where you're educating people on your product or service, but teaching them how to do it. How do you create something that is unique and going to stand out and still benefit your business to help you grow?
I think that there's untapped potential and amount of people who will opt into a virtual course of some kind, and I think that there really is the myth of saturation deters a lot of people from following through with it. I think the conversion piece comes in when, and this again is sometimes when we're in it, when you're doing something every day. If I were to create a course on teaching even funnels, I've done it every single day for so many years that
Mm,
it would be, I'm sure it'd overlook so many of those elementary tasks that you would have to do before you can even get a really high performing funnel. And so
mm,
just by creating that course, someone would go through it and think, this is way more than I want to invest my time into learning. Let me actually
right,
just pay you to do it for me. And so
right.
I mean, that's a really easy way to convert people. Some people love going through the course because they want to know exactly what to expect when they do work with you. So sometimes it's, hey, pay for this course, go through it, and then you can actually credit the cost of that to our services
Mm.
once you choose to engage us.
I've seen some cool things recently with people who were creating courses, like a restaurant, and I can't remember what type of food it was, but they did a course on, let's say it was Italian food, on making pasta, making the spaghetti sauce, etc. And they sold recipes at the end of it. But they also had a couple restaurants, and it was supposed to be more localized, but they got national attention on it, and it grew their brand nationally, and that started to pick up even locally. More people were going to their restaurant, and it's something that you're like, I own a restaurant. What am I going to do that's unique and interesting? That was actually really cool. I've heard of a doctor who has a med spa, and they go through how you do injections and procedures and skincare, but actually walking you through, like, this is what I do as a doctor. So when you're talking to a doctor, here are the top 10 questions that you need to ask them about what they're going to do prior to going into that procedure to make sure that you're going to get the outcome that you desire. All these little things that people have turned into courses that I was like, how, as a plastic surgeon or a dermatologist, can you ever create a course that's going to be interesting? But to your point, and I love what you actually said, you said it's the myth of saturation, that
Mhm.
there's a myth that the market is oversaturated. And if I really step back and think about it, you are completely right, because there's how many people in your industry? Even if there is 200,000 people who are funnel creators, or a million people who are funnel creators, there's billions of people on the earth. There's hundreds of millions of people in the US. So there's so many people who don't do it on a daily basis, are going to find it fascinating, interesting, want to learn, or just want to hire you, because when you create that course, when you are a teacher, it goes back to our programming from when we were in grade school. You look as if you are an expert. So you can figure out something within your niche for your product or service to teach to your community of people. It could be 100 people, 10 people, or 10,000 people. It will help drive business and help your business grow.
And it doesn't even have to be a high ticket course. I think that's another thing that has often been misconstrued. I mean, we have helped a lot of people previously use courses simply as a self-liquidating way to get leads. Let's
Mm.
just say I throw out an ad and I'm just trying to get leads for, I'll just use real estate business because that's my industry. So let's just say I'm trying to put out ads. I want new agents who want to come join my team. I'm going to be probably paying a higher dollar amount to actually get any lead through the door. But if I
Mm.
were to put out a low ticket course, let's just say $27, and I'm teaching the basics of what to do in your first 30 days as a real estate agent, and now I'm pushing that course, as you go through it, I'm probably only going to pay $15, $20 per person to convert into that $27 course. And so I've either got all of those leads now of people who could potentially join my team for free, or I've made even a
Right.
$2, $3, $5, $7 profit off of them. And so that's another thing that I think can be used as a tool to collect high quality leads and pay back the cost of actually acquiring those.
So if you're going to use a course as a lead capture to grow your business, to find the type of team members that you want to hire, it doesn't necessarily have to be a high ticket item. And you know what's really interesting that you say that now that I think about it, it is, let's take real estate, for instance. If you want to teach people how to invest in retail or in storage units or in multifamily, and you teach a course that's not $5,000 and it's really only $500 or $99, it's because you want those people as investors versus trying to make money off of selling a course. And I think when it really comes down to it, Tessa, maybe I should be a little bit more honest, is I think a lot of people who are out there teaching courses are BS. They're doing it to make money off of selling the course. They're not doing it because they've done it. They've done one fix and flip in their lives, and they're trying to teach this course to, for $10,000 as if they're the true expert, and they're not. So I think that's where, and I think a lot of people run into that, where you want to be genuine and authentic because you actually have the experience, and you see these yokels out there who are teaching these courses who are supposed to be experts, but they're really not experts.
Yeah.
So how do you differentiate yourself from a lot of people who are in the industry just trying to make money off of selling courses?
Well, another thing that someone said to me that kind of blew my mind, because at one point I got really frustrated with the amount of people that were claiming to be experts in selling these courses, and it did deter me at one point. And I listened to this podcast. I can't remember who it was that said it, but in order to be 100% of service to someone, you only need to be 10% ahead of them. And so I think my way of really separating myself is focusing on, and though I do consider myself an expert in many ways in this industry, I really focus in on helping them solve like a specific problem. So if your goal is that you have a decent flow of leads, but you're not converting them well, maybe that's what I'm going to focus and hone in on teaching you, is how I can help you increase your lead conversion by 20% or more. And now, because I've done that, it's something I have expertise in. I'm 10% or more ahead of the person who can't convert their leads as highly. I'm now 100% of service to them. And so I think that's a really, really quick way to kind of differentiate yourself from the masses. And honestly, you'll probably end up selling more and attracting more people rather than just saying, hey, I can help you be a successful, real estate agent.
All right. In order to be 100% of service to someone, you only have to be at least 10% or more ahead of them.
Correct.
I've never really thought about that, because if you look at it from the standpoint of James Clear's book, Atomic Habits, it's that one minute step. And if you're making that one minute step daily, weekly, monthly, it compounds over years. And if you can learn one lesson that is 10% more than what you know from an individual who is 10% ahead of you, you might not be able to continue to learn from that individual, but they've taken you to the next level. So then in return, you can go and find that next resource, that next teacher.
Yep. Absolutely.
So let's talk about now social media as a whole. I find it in today's market tough to figure out what medium you should go down. Now, I'll use myself as an example. I've started to solely focus on LinkedIn as my social media. Everything else is secondary, and I have a content strategy around it, but it's not the same way with my LinkedIn, because a lot of my business leads, my relationships live on LinkedIn, and it's very buttoned up, very professional. I like that. So, how do you as a business owner determine where you should be taking that brand that you've built, that story and that message, or the education and the content that you can put out into the market and select the channel of social media that's going to be best for you?
I do think you have to put your business through an initial sort of assessment of where you think the majority of your audience is hanging out. So, if you are highly B2B focused, yeah, a place like LinkedIn is probably a much smarter place to put a lot of emphasis. But at the same time, I really do try to encourage business owners to not talk themselves out of or deter themselves from other platforms by assuming that their audience is not there, because you have to also really, really harness the power of word of mouth. And so,
Mm.
if, like, for example, one of the biggest things that people say, oh, I'm not going to go on TikTok, it's just a bunch of 14-year-olds dancing and doing whatever. But first of all, it's not. There's so many people on there. But if you were to go on there and share about your business, there's also tons of people that may see that. And again, if you're speaking directly to specific solutions that you have and ways that you solve these problems, it is not uncommon that somebody's like showing that to, their mom, their brother, their business partner, their husband, their wife. And now it kind of gets this momentum as well. So my general rule of thumb is I do think you should choose a platform that's your primary focus. And that's going to be like where you really spend a ton of time specifically crafting content for that platform. But I think that you should have an additional sharing strategy across at least two other platforms. And with so many of those AI tools and things like that, I mean, it gets easier and easier to do that somewhat automatically. So I
Mm.
think that you're selling yourself short if you completely abandon every other platform.
Mm. Interesting. So you have worked with, this really plays into the social media, the sales funnel, the marketing and branding side of the business. You've worked with some very big, famous people and helped build their brands. Can you just kind of walk us through what you did, how you got started, and how other people, whether it is a local brand or a national or international brand, people can do the same thing to actually build their brand?
Yeah, I mean, the way it happened is kind of interesting. It was at a event. I was a part of this mastermind, and at the time, I was at this mastermind, and we're kind of doing a round table. Everyone's talking, and I spoke about a course that I had created. It was my first ever course. It was Instagram for real estate agents. I was teaching them how to generate leads on Instagram,
Mm.
and the videographer at this event, funny enough, was really intrigued by what I was saying because he was the videographer for Tarek El Moussa from Flip or Flop. And so he
Mhm.
pulled me aside towards the end of it, said, "Hey, we're kind of thinking about creating a course for Tarek. Like, would you be willing to just get on a call with me and tell me some of, how you did it and kind of how you got started?" I said, "Of course." And I got on a call. I think we honestly spent a few hours and I just told them absolutely everything that I did, that I knew, how it worked, what I would suggest. And it was sort of the end of that. And I didn't think much of it. I just completely told them everything. I never really assumed that would turn into some sort of client relationship. And a few weeks later, I get a call again from this guy. I'm actually at the airport on my way to speak at another event. And he's like, "Hey, we kind of have like this emergency situation. We have the opportunity to launch a course for Tarek, but we have to do so within like the next 2 weeks or something."
Mm.
And I was like, "That's I don't wanna say impossible, but that's gonna be tough." And he was like, "Well, what do you need to make it happen?" And I basically listed out, not even monetarily, just like, this is what would have to happen content creation wise, platform wise, all this stuff. And so we ended up making that happen. That first course that we were pushing for, we ended up scrapping, long story there, and we kind of rebuilt something else, which is now his still primary course, which is Homeschooled by Tarek El Moussa. And
Mm.
so it was, again, just by providing a bunch of upfront value with nothing really expected in return, turned into that relationship. And so through that, I was able to really help craft a brand story and take someone's knowledge, package it, and turn that into something that can really continue to live far beyond that.
So it's really in your mind, and you are an early adapter to this. It's the courses, which is one thing that can really help set you apart.
I definitely think so, and I think it can help to concrete you within your industry, because there are a lot of people. I mean, you made this point earlier. Naturally, you're going to make the assumption, whether it's
Mm.
true or not, that somebody who has a course or has written a book or has been published in a bunch of articles, the general population is going to automatically assume that they have more authority and expertise in a matter. And so we
Right.
have unfortunately seen people that use this in a negative way, but you can also really use that in a positive way within your business to highlight what you know and your level of expertise. And I do think that it really sets you apart and makes you look truly, legitimate for years to come, especially if you have multiple that continue to pile up over years.
But you know what? Now that I think about this, and this is really enlightening because what I'm working on doing as an entrepreneur myself is reframing the way I'm looking at things. If I and one of my buddies who's a marketing guru has a funny timeline on depending on your age, how you look for information. Like people who are my age in their early 40s, they're going to go to YouTube. People who are younger look at things on TikTok and so on like how tos. So I had to get into a safe and I had the combination, but I couldn't remember how to turn the dials. So I Googled it and went through two videos and I found a video that gave me the information on how to get into the safe. And I got into the safe, opened the key, and got what I needed. I was also talking to one of the individuals who we interviewed recently who has had a very successful mechanical and plumbing business, which they sold for 8 figures. And even if you were in a mechanical and plumbing business or you were in a safe business, teaching a course on locks and safety and how to make sure that your house is ironclad, teaching a course on keeping your systems updated in your house because the value that it adds when you go to sell it, the prevention of, leaks and problems that you might potentially have. If you were to do that because somebody who's a homeowner and they want to keep up the value of their home, that is a very different way than how to fix and flip, how to market and sell my home. That is a really unique way of saying, no, I've got this asset that I've got to take care of it. How do I do that the best I possibly can? And then in return, they're selling probably a lower cost course, but they're going to get business out of it because now they become an expert. They can take testimonials, they can take clips from the course that they've created, push that out on their social media, and it gives them a really unique marketing angle. I'm now that we're having this conversation, I'm thinking of courses in a very different way than I've actually thought of them. I'm not putting a course in on my plate right now. I don't have time to do one, but it could be a really creative way for a business owner to get out there and garner more leads for their business.
It's also, as you're saying, it's kind of a shift in mindset. I think that's something we've seen in the past, I'll even say 10 years. There was a point where webinars was really the biggest way to like using internet marketing to collect leads and to get people to potentially convert. I think that it's a really great way to look at courses now is almost a shorter, condensed, on your own style webinar. So, as you think about it, most people would even register for a webinar, not attend live, but just because they know they're going to get that replay that they can watch on their own time. The course, in some ways, is sort of a similar thing. It's just breaking it down into easy to digest video course modules that they can access at any point. And that sort of, serves a very similar purpose in many cases.
You know what's really cool? I didn't expect the conversation, as sometimes we never know where the conversation is going to go on this podcast, to really hone into this. And I think that this is really unique and something that many of us are completely aware of. All of us have bought a ton of courses, I'm sure, as consumers, just in general. Some we've watched, some we haven't watched. To your point, some we file away and we watch later, or we watch the follow up recap video of the course. But they really are, if you step back and and you look at it from the standpoint of, I'm not trying to make this my bread and butter. I'm using this as an informative lead capture. This is something that absolutely will differentiate my business. A course is a massive value add. So let's just talk really quick before we go into the rapid fire section. If you are thinking about launching a course, what platforms are out there today that are really great for doing so?
I mean, I'm a huge believer and a fan of School, SKOOL.com. I just think it's extremely intuitive. It's very easy to use. I have had hundreds of people in my community who have, across all different age brackets, that have said it's very easy to use. They're having an easy time navigating it. It's sort of as if a course platform and a Facebook group combined. So you can also have that community element. You can have a calendar. It has a bit of gamification, so you can sort of incentivize some engagement. That's just my personal favorite. I think it's really easy to use. If you don't go that route, I do think Kajabi is a good one that's been around for ages. It's a bit more technical as far as figuring out exactly how it works, but I think that's a great alternative.
Great insight. And you have dropped some bombs, shed a ton of light on us. And I think that this is going to be very, very helpful to the audience. So now we do the fun stuff. Let's go into our rapid fire section. You ready?
I am ready.
In a fight, who wins, Barbie or My Little Pony?
My Little Pony.
Is it the hooves?
Yeah, I think I picture it doing a little kickback with a little donkey kick.
Yes. Yeah, there you go. It's a zombie apocalypse. You have to leave your home. What is the one weapon that you are going to grab to protect you and your family?
A knife.
Cool. Number one business book today that all of our entrepreneurs listening to the podcast should be reading.
Oh, I actually have a great answer to this because I just finished it and I just told you to read it, which is that 10x is easier than 2x. It is truly one of the best books I've read in quite a long time, and I read a lot of books, so I think that's saying a lot.
I will second that. I've got 40 pages left, which I'll finish this evening. Wow, it's a good one. It's got me rethinking that I really need to step up my game. I mean, I thought I was doing all right, but I've been 2xing and it's time to start 10xing. So I'll do a review on that this Sunday on my LinkedIn. Cool. All right. So next question. Dead or alive, if you had the opportunity to have dinner with anyone this evening, who would it be and why?
I think you're gonna laugh at me, but I would say Dave Portnoy.
Who?
Dave Portnoy of Barstool Sports. Yeah.
Oh, Dave Portnoy. Okay, unpack that one for the audience.
I think he's extremely smart. I love that he is just who he is. I don't think he changes his personality to like appease any one person. So for better or worse, love him or hate him, he just is exactly how he is all the time. And I think that's extremely rare, especially for people who have grown large public followings. And I also just absolutely am shocked by what he's built and then gone through ups and downs with Barstool Sports. I think is pretty incredible.
Awesome. Who are two people in your life who have helped you get to where you are in your career today?
Well, one absolutely that comes to mind is my boyfriend Ramon. Not to be sappy, but he has helped me tremendously in so many ways. Just like truly having unwavering support and somebody who believes in you, especially on those days when you're questioning yourself, which as entrepreneurs, we have those days where sometimes you're like, what am I even doing? Where am I? Who am I? What's going on? Having somebody that's just a really strong sounding board and supportive and has certainty and confidence in you is extremely, extremely powerful.
Yeah.
And a second one would probably be somebody that I met in a mastermind group, actually. His name's Sammy Knight, and he was my personal mentor for a while and helped me so much by putting things just into perspective of really what's important and how you can build something scalable and sustainable over time without compromising the things that are important in your life.
Awesome. Let's say you are a business that is doing $10 million in annual revenue, and I walk through your door this afternoon and I hand you a $300,000 check. What would you advise that business owner do with the $300,000 to double their profits over the next 12 months?
I mean, I think by the sound of this show, I'm going to have to say you invest that into some creative marketing. And I would say not just doubling down what you're currently doing, but expressing it in a few new avenues, specifically leveraging user generated content slash influencers or some sort of ambassador program, I think is really powerful.
And last but not least, what is the number one obstacle that you had to overcome in your life and career to build the success that you have today?
I mean, I think it's an obstacle I still face and still have to actively overcome on a regular basis, and that is getting in my own way. I think whether it's from outside influence or my own self-doubt or just those days where things don't work out as you would hope, I definitely go through those ups and downs. And it's easy to think like, how did I get here? How did this happen? Why isn't it further along? But I think in reality, you always just have to acknowledge and appreciate that every single step has got you to this place, and it's all a part of a much bigger picture. I always say even a step in the wrong direction was a step in the right direction because it shows you where not to go. And so constantly reminding myself of that and looking at the bigger picture instead of trying to focus too much on that. I think that's really well explained in the book I just mentioned, 10x is easier than 2x. They talk about the gap and the gain. And so often we're not paying attention to how far we've come. We're just looking at this idealistic outcome that we're hoping for. And that idealistic outcome is always going to be constantly moving. And you're going to live in this kind of like lack and unfulfilling area if you're only ever looking at how far away that next goal is instead of what you've accomplished.
Beautiful. Tessabella Jelten, please tell everyone where they can reach you if they'd like to contact you.
Yeah, the best place to connect with me is on Instagram. It is Tessabella, Tessaabella. I know it's a lot of double letters, but just start typing it in. It'll pop up, I promise. And that's the best place to find me. And I would love to connect with anyone. So if you're listening to this, shoot me a message. Let me know that you heard me on the show. And I would love to chat with you.
Thank you for joining us on 0 to 100.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks for tuning in to 0 to 100 podcast. We hope you feel inspired and ready to accelerate your business. Remember, your journey to success starts with a single step. Keep learning, keep growing, and keep striving for greatness. For more resources and show notes, visit jaredguyrandolph.com. We'll see you next time.